Welcome to our second webcast, Virtual Mobility and Remote Working. In this webcast, Catherine Osborne and I will be exploring what the near-term future of mobilising talent may look like as we arise from our COVID-induced slumber. One of the most overused terms I've heard during the COVID lockdown has been the new normal. My view is that this term has become simply a lazy metaphor for change. A good example of what I mean is the evolution of virtual mobility and remote working. The reality is that the global business community was already moving towards, and in many cases implementing, initiatives to accommodate a more flexible workforce and to reduce costs. Does virtual mobility and remote working form an integral feature of the future of work? Well, let's take a closer look.
The concepts of virtual mobility and remote working are not new, but we've seen the use of them become more widespread as a result of COVID-19 and the limitations or complete restrictions on business travel. And sometimes the terms are used interchangeably, but to me, remote working is where I will do my role from a remote location. So my existing role, a full-time role, and I might do it from my home here in the Central Coast in Australia. I might do it from another state. I might do it from another location. To me, virtual assignments are a more formalised arrangement, where in the past I might have relocated physically from Australia to, say, Singapore for 9 months working on a project. Virtual mobility is where there's no physical relocation. So I would be working on behalf of a entity overseas, doing a project overseas, but doing that remotely, and potentially been supplemented with business trips or short-term assignments to complement that virtual assignment arrangement. And I think whether you look at virtual mobility, remote working, both have important considerations with regard to the employee experience and the risk and compliance that needs to be managed. I think that mobility provides huge benefits to an organisation and to an employee's development. And there are some roles that are very difficult to be completed remotely. There's a huge benefit of having that face-to-face interaction. But at a time where mobility is limited and challenging to implement, virtual assignments and remote working have been a way to ensure business continuity. And there are huge benefits to these types of arrangements, in particular in relation to managing cost and access to a wider talent pool and that business continuity point that I mentioned. There are, however, potential challenges that need to be factored in when setting up remote working or virtual assignment arrangements. And that's the management of the compliance, the risk, the different processes that might need to be followed. Also ensuring that people have the right tools to be effective managing and working with different cultures remotely. And so whilst I think there'll definitely be traditional mobility and there'll be more virtual mobility, I think either way there's going to be a greater scrutiny on the purpose or the why of an assignment. And one of the questions that will be asked as part of the business case is, can this role be done remotely? I think this is a really interesting question because whilst there's evidence to suggest that certain generations within the workforce would prefer to work remotely, flexibly, gig worker arrangements with technology, we've actually all already gone through that transition in some way. All of the workforce and outside of the workforce has had to learn new ways of working, new ways of connecting, new ways of communicating. And there's evidence to suggest that the majority of the workforce actually want to continue that remote working in some way. And I think there's been a big change in mindset that working remotely can be productive, you can meet business needs, you can stay connected. And I think the majority of the workforce of the future are going to look for new roles or new opportunities that incorporate remote working. So whilst some might say that certain generations would have an easier transition, or as a result of in 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials, I actually think that all generations have already started to go through that transition, which will be continued as organisations look towards planning their workforce of the future. Employee wellness has been a huge focus for businesses and leaders throughout COVID-19, and those leaders that have been successful are ones that have found ways to connect, motivate, support, engage their teams remotely. And I think these lessons should be applied when looking to formalise any future remote working or virtual assignment arrangements. So what can leaders, managers, mobility teams, talent professionals do to connect with the individual, to make sure they have access to all of the relevant information that they might need, to encourage others to connect, others in the same situation to connect with each other, and bearing in mind that employee wellness is physical wellness, it's mental wellness, it's financial wellness, it might be spiritual wellness. So really building that culture of well-being. And I think it's up to each manager and each team member to develop on that emotional intelligence piece to recognise if something may not be right with somebody, or if someone wants to talk about a particular issue or is feeling isolated, to ask that question and then to also know how to respond. So I think most definitely employee wellness needs to be a top consideration when formalising approaches to remote working or virtual assignments.
There is, however, one very important factor that will help the workforce of the future return to the workplace. That factor, in my view, is leadership. From the team leader to the CEO, the post-COVID workforce will embrace leaders who can chart a journey unambiguously to a collective and high-performing future. We are all, by nature, social creatures. During lockdown, the thing most of us missed the most was the day-to-day interactions we had with family, friends, and colleagues. The best workplaces have a culture of collaborative, high-performing team environments. These environments are not created by accident and take years to create. COVID will not destroy these environments if it is hardwired into an organisation's DNA. However, COVID has increased the focus on leadership qualities. As has been the case following previous significant economic downturns, the businesses which have a clear purpose and ensure that their leaders live that purpose each and every day tend to reap the benefits of recovery quicker than might otherwise be the case. I have every confidence that as the global economy recovers from COVID, people will actually want to return to the workplace. Just as we've observed prior to COVID, virtual mobility and remote working will form part of that future of work. But I predict that there will be a strong desire for people to re-engage in the workplace and with their colleagues. COVID has given the workforce of the future more flexibility and more choices. One of the most significant choices facing the business community will be the desire to work with leaders who can inspire, can nurture, can navigate in times of uncertainty, and can create opportunities for growth.